Episode 1, The Dog Menace. The CARES Act provides over $2 trillion in economic stimulus for the benefit of all Americans, workers, families, and small businesses. No, it doesn't. This is a hate crime against future generations. Play that funky music, white boy Drew. Welcome to the first episode of No Mercy, No Malice, or as I like to call it, what series of bad decisions led me to ad-supported linear television? But I digress. I'm Scott Galloway, professor at NYU Stern School of Business, and first up my rant, or as I like to call it, gun shows in town, bitches! The CARES Act is another form of wealth transfer masquerading as economic stimulus. Few breadcrumbs assigned or thrown into the middle class simply for optics. Continued mission of government, continued mission, not only to keep rich people rich at the expense of middle and lower class Americans, but our grandchildren will have to pay for these debt-fueled shock absorbers for rich people. Why? Because they don't vote. Let's rap about PPP, or as I call it, Madoff times 2,000. Of the first $350 billion in PPP, more than 25% of the funding went to less than 2% of the firms. That means 1 in every $4 went to the largest 1.5% of applicants. We have literally income inequality in the form of a stimulus package. The largest 4% of loans receive more money than the smallest 74%. That's right, this 4% getting more than this 74%. Public companies with combined market capitalizations of over $18 billion received $1 billion in PPP before some were shamed into paying it back. That's almost 6 times the largest bank heist in U.S. history. The majority of PPP funds are not saving people, but bailing out millionaires. Kurasushi, 80% owned by a Japanese parent company with an $800 million market cap, on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, received $6 million before returning it. Nikola Motors secured $4 million and was refusing to give it back. Continental Materials received $5.5 million. The Ashford Group of companies associated with the hotel tycoon Monty Bennett applied for $126 million and received more than $58. Monty's companies have paid their executive team almost $200 million in the past decade alone. Monty is now returning the money because of update eligibility rules. However, a study by USC found entrepreneurs tend to be wider, better educated, and more likely to come from high-earning two-parent families. What do you know? Rich white dudes are making out really well. What a shocker! And these are the people we've decided to bail out. If we want to stimulate the economy, if we want to juice this thing, if we want to put a cattle prod up the ass of the economy, well, it's simple. You know what happens when you give lower and middle income people money? They spend it. There are 128 million households in the U.S. with the bottom half registering incomes of less than $65,000. If we took that $2.5 trillion in stimulus and spread it across those households, we could give each over $30,000. Small businesses don't need artificially inflated job roles. They need demand to come back. Get the banks, get the small businesses out of the way. Protect people, not companies. If a firm can't survive a 3 or even 6 month interruption in business, then maybe it should fail. Part of capitalism is letting companies fail. We've embraced rugged capitalism on the way up, privatizing the gains, and cronyism on the way down, socializing the losses with taxpayer-funded bailouts and huge deficits. Small businesses, we are the wolves of the business world. Now, government is turning us into the bitch poodles waiting for government to come home and feed us. Easy to blame the administration, the ass clown, Count Chocula, and post-dementia Reagan. At least they're more explicit about their criminality to transfer wealth from every cohort to rich baby boomers. However, we expect more from our Democratic leaders who are complicit in Madoff 2000. The real culprits here aren't rich managers and owners of small firms feeding at the trough, but the U.S., who's decided to elect weird and weak leaders with no oversight. The only bipartisan action in Washington is an agreement to steal from future generations with reckless spending that keeps their donors wealthy with scraps thrown at the middle class purely for optics. COVID-19 is horrific and painful for many of us. Hopefully, one of the positives from this pain is it inspires more forward-looking investments in our government and specifically the CDC, so we don't find ourselves again as a nation that got this more wrong, handled this crisis more incompetently, focus more attention on blaming anybody or anything to avoid facing the hard truths. With just 5% of the world's population, we have about a third of the deaths. We had more time to prepare. We spent more money on healthcare. We think of ourselves as being the most innovative. And the US and China are going to go down as incompetent and corrupt as it relates to COVID-19. We should and must do much better than this moving forward. Let's start calling the rescue package what it is, a hate crime against future generations. We should be protecting people, not companies. So today's inaugural guest, our first guest, Mark Benioff, is the founder and CEO of Salesforce, a company that literally touches almost every organization in America. And he's also an advocate for journalism, having recently purchased Time Magazine, is considered an exemplar of a CEO who is making the transition from a sole focus on shareholders to someone who focuses on all stakeholders. Mark, thanks for being here.
Great to see you, Scott.
We're all in this together. Okay, first question. You have 50,000 employees. Is there a mantra, are there kind of 2 or 3 principles you look to in terms of leadership in a time of crisis? Have you thought through, these are my behaviors, this is my mantra around being a leader in difficult times?
Well, yes, and I'll tell you that, I've been the CEO of Salesforce for over 20 years, and this is now maybe my 3rd or 4th major economic crisis that I've managed through. And the first thing is you need to get everyone out of paralysis and into participation. That's number one. People have to realize everybody has to do something, not just on a corporate level, not just every company has to do something, whether you're building a product to help companies recover or doing something philanthropically like PPE that I mentioned. On an individual basis for your employees, what are they doing? Is everybody selling something, servicing something, marketing something? Make sure that every employee is participating. 2, make sure every one of your employees is enabled. Make sure they are trained, that they understand everything from, hey, when you enter the workforce and or the workplace today, you're gonna have your fever taken. If you end up with a fever tomorrow, and you're not coming in, we're gonna need to do contact tracing to tell the people that you are around, well, you now need to self-quarantine. That level of enablement and learning new skills during a time like this is gonna be critical. And the third thing is companies need to stay relevant at times like this. They need to be part of the solution. They need to show that what they're doing is something that is going to improve the world.
You have openly said that you think Facebook and social media are the tobacco of our industry. What do you think should be done?
Well, I've been talking about the risk of social media for some time, as you know. And the number one thing, Scott, in this crisis that has appalled me is when I see misinformation about the virus that puts people's health at risk on social media, that should get taken down. We have tremendous artificial intelligence technologies. You hear about them all the time, how they're going to send us to Mars or how they're going to drive our cars down the road. Well, this technology should be deployed by these companies to take this material off the network now. They should be holding themselves responsible for truth and trust, and that they don't have themselves anchored to those high values is beyond, what I think is acceptable for business today.
But what if they don't? What if there's anti-vax? What if there's misinformation, whether it's injecting disinfectants, whether it's the source of the virus? I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that they don't take it down. What do we do? What do you think should happen?
Well, I think these companies need to be highly regulated. And I've said that for a long time, mostly because they're targeting your kids, Scott. They're going after your kids with products specifically targeting your kids, trying to get them hooked just like cigarette companies did. And when they crossed that line, that's when I said, okay, you know what? Everybody needs to be talking about this, that we need to throw down regulations on these companies. They need to be held to standards and they need to be held accountable for their actions, just like magazine and newspaper companies are. You know that I own Time Magazine. Well, yep. We have those set of regulations on Time Magazine, Scott. And if we publish something, we're responsible for it. I feel that's also has to be true for the social networks as well.
Mark, stay put. After our quick break, I want to ask you about your shelter in place with your family and, of course, your favorite 80s band, plus my winners and losers and predictions with a special surprise guest. What a thrill. This is No Mercy, No Malice. I'm Professor Scott Galloway. This is No Mercy, No Malice. I'm Scott Galloway. We're back with our very first inaugural guest, Salesforce founder and CEO, Mark Benioff. We have a tendency to kind of lump all of big tech into one big basket of companies, and they're different. Do you think that YouTube, Facebook, I don't know, I look at my kids' addiction to devices and Apple. Do you think there is one company that stands out above the rest in terms of damage to society?
Well, I mean, I have talked about how I think that, Facebook looks like it's the new cigarettes. It's an organization where the product is not good for you. It's addictive. They're going after your kids. They have not said that they're holding themselves responsible for truth or trust or making sure that the information is accurate. And this is a moment in time when we have just a horrific situation in the world, and these social networks have to play their part. And that is a critical moment for them to step up, change their values, and to say, truth and trust are our highest value. And we're going to make sure that you get the information you need to be healthy and to protect your family. That's the role of these organizations. If that's not their role, then they should reassess what role they play in our ecosystem.
So Mark, last question. Distinct of your role as a CEO of a tech company, obviously an enormously successful tech company, speak as a husband, a dad, a friend, and a citizen. What advice would you give to people at this stage in our life outside of business?
Well, right now, I think that, we all need to be taking care of ourselves. You're not any good to anybody else if you have not taken care of your own health. And second, take care of your family. That's your responsibility. And take care of your employees. That's 1, 2, and 3. Now that you've done that, now get ready to go back to work, but make sure you're going back to work safely and taking the precautions that you need to take everybody's health with you. You want to keep that as the first principle. That's the most important thing. Now, as we move towards a vaccine, we're going to all have to focus and think about what are the things that we can do to help get the economy going again. As business leaders, I think we have to think about what are the products we can offer. What are the philanthropic things that we need to be doing to serve society? That's what's on my mind. And that's what drives me at Salesforce every single day. That is, the business of business is improving the state of the world. And companies that are doing that, especially at times like this, are the companies that are going to be the strongest on the other side of this.
All right, I lied. Last question. Best 80s music you're listening to right now?
Well, you know that I love Metallica, but I also do love Prince. And I love that early Neil Young, too.
Metallica and Neil Young. You're that guy. Prince, I get. George Michael, English Beat, REM. I win. I win, Mark Benioff. Thank you for being here. Best of luck to you.
Great to be with you.
Now it's time for winners and losers. A winner, Jeff Bezos and Amazon. I get the sense you're going to hear that a lot under the winners column. Amazon's superpower, replacing profits with vision and growth. No other firm, maybe with the exception of Netflix, has been able to pull off this Jedi mind trick where in exchange for running a company at break even, their stock goes up, giving them cheaper capital such that they can pull the future forward and make investments no other firm can match. Most recently, just last week, Amazon told shareholders it would invest its expected $4 billion second quarter profits in coronavirus-related efforts. What does that mean? It means buying personal protective equipment for workers and building its own testing capability. We're talking about effectively, think about this, the first vaccinated supply chain globally. This is, in a word, genius! Who does this? Who thinks of this? The workers, the vendors, the customers, the suppliers are going to have one supply chain globally that is virus-free, that is COVID immune or near COVID immune. A loser, a continued loser, the board of directors, if you can even call them that, of Tesla. After being the subject of conjecture that calls for factories to reopen were nothing but a naked attempt to buttress his own wealth, Elon tweeted he believes the stock is too high. The markets agreed with him, and immediately the equity was taken down 10%, shedding the value of Southwest Airlines. Rocket Man also tweeted that he believes shelter-in-place orders are fascist. No, they're not. Fascism is extreme nationalism, a refusal to condemn violence against the perceived enemies of the ruling party and the demonization of immigrants. Who fits that bill? Maybe our president, demonizing immigrants. Who else fits that bill? An authoritarian ruler that disregards all liberal institutions and checks and balances, perhaps a robust fiduciary body like a board of directors. In sum, Mr. Musk, you and the president walk into a bar. Who is the fascist? Yes. So here to help us round out winners and losers and talk about tech is my media wife, Kara Swisher. Kara, how are you?
What? Good. I'm not your media wife. What is?
You are still my media wife. And by the way, did you notice
What?
I have a TV show?
I heard. I saw Mark Benioff. I mean, I just texted him. I'm like, what are you doing on linear television? What are you doing with that guy?
I might be the Garfunkel to your Simon, but my sublime lyrics and buttery voice is finally recognized, and I'm on ad-supported linear TV.
Good for you.
Big news. Congress wants to make tech companies and businesses exempt from liability around COVID-19.
Yes.
Your thoughts?
I think it's terrible. I think it's ridiculous. I mean, not Congress does. The Republicans do. Let's be clear. The Democrats are trying to push back. Small businesses, yes, if they have to do too much onerous stuff, it's going to hurt their business. But they have to all be safe at a very baseline level. And so I think what's really important is to think really hard about what companies should do, what should be the baseline level. And for big companies like Amazon and others, which is already doing this, by the way, they have to, or a meat processing plant, they have to put safety standards in that will protect workers.
I need some insight from you. What is going on with your buddy Elon Musk? Like, what is going on there?
Oh, want to move to him? Speaking
what
of
is going on
hazard pay,
there?
I don't know. I mean, he's done this before. I mean, people don't remember during the period when he was trying to ramp up the making of of his cars. He slept at the factory. He started tweeting crazily. He started doing the 420 thing. And so it's not uncommon for him to do this. It's just that he had settled a case with the SEC not to do things related to the stock.
This is his second blatant example of market manipulation. Do you think anything happens, or do you think the SEC is
class action lawsuits?
He's more powerful than us?
No, the stock went down considerably. I think class action lawsuits is one of the things that you're going to see. And he really does need to control his tweets. And there's nobody, if you think the board is going to do this, you're absolutely wrong. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, 100%. They've shown themselves to be the second least effective board in technology, just behind
They
Twitter.
want to do it this way. They want to do this. They want to do
Yeah.
this. I've talked to lots of board. They like let Elon be Elon is their attitude here. Absolutely, 100%.
All right, Jungle Cat, thank you for being the first guest on our regular episode.
Wait.
Oh, good. Here we go. Here we go. You won't even let me have my own TV show. You won't even let me have my own TV show. What do you? Oh my God, what is that? A cat.
It's a jungle cat, for goodness sake. Anyway, good luck, Scott. I think it's great.
First guest on a weekly episode of Famous Lesbians. Next week, Sean Hannity and Lindsey Graham. The lesbian humor never gets old. I'll see you this week, Jungle Cat. Thank you for being here, Kara.
Right. Thank you, big dog.
And now, our predictions. I went in for a vasectomy, had a little bit of swelling, just a skosh of swelling. Our predictions. In 30 days, Amazon stock up 10% or more, Tesla stock down 10% or more. Both stocks are overvalued. Amazon's investment, their forward-looking investment in a vaccinated supply chain versus Tesla CEO's lack of self-control means that Amazon becomes more overvalued and Tesla less undervalued. 30 days, we'll check in, we'll hold ourselves accountable. We need to take a quick break. We'll answer your questions in office hours next, plus our algebra of happiness, what we can all learn from our grandparents about coping with this quarantine. I'm Scott Galloway, and this is No Mercy, No Malice. Okay, so why the white background? Well, let's be honest, would you want anything to get in the way of what is this tall drink of lemonade? What, you're thinking I look like a fish that swam too close to a reactor? Well, guess what? My 12-year-old, no joke, did my makeup this morning. And let's be honest, I look radiant! And now it's time for office hours. Our first question, roll tape.
Hi, Professor Galloway. It's Holly here. Big fan of your shows. I have a question around higher education. I'm a current student at Columbia completing my MPA and wondering whether I should stay the course with Zoom classes, drop out, save the 50K, or maybe take a leave of absence.
Thank you, Holly. I would stay the course, and that is you are towards the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal and the return on investment, if we just look at this economically around graduate education, isn't the education itself, it's the certification. So if you were just starting, I'd say delay, but if you're almost there, if you're halfway there, keep your eyes on the prize, get the certification, get on with your life. Thanks, Holly. Let's end with a math lesson. my algebra of happiness. Though Jesus, as many evangelicals believe, does in fact return, I believe he would make a beeline for our Capitol, find the offices of our elected officials, and throw up on them. I believe in Jesus. I just don't buy his lineage. I'm an atheist, but I do have gods. These gods guide me and are powerful role models. The first is Jesus, who started with love the poor. That's a pretty decent place for all of us to start. Another of my gods is my grandfather on my mother's side, Norman Levine, a London tailor who bought a loaf of challah every Friday night to divide equally amongst his 6 children with surgical precision. By 39, Norman, my grandfather, was taking his children to sleep in an underground tube station after their house was bombed and destroyed during the Blitzkrieg. On one evening, in the fog of scramble to the shelter, his 9-year-old daughter was struck and killed by a truck. Think about this. At 53, he died at home of bowel cancer only after having his daughter, his older daughter, run over by a truck. During the whole illness, he saw a doctor once. That God that is Norman Levine visits me whenever I'm feeling sorry for myself. And it's something I hate about myself. It happens way too much. He grabs my hand and he whispers one thing and the same thing over and over: you have no problems. Most recently, on a business trip to Paris, I found myself extremely jet lagged and missing my boys at the restaurant of the Hoxton Hotel. Their mother sent a picture of our son dressed in an Einstein costume for class presentation. All my success, all the bullshit relevance, and I still can't figure out a way to be with my kids in important moments. I failed, I'm disappointed in myself. And then my grandfather shows up. He marvels at the objects of art that are the people in this hotel. He laughs at the fact that my hotel room probably costs more for a single night than he made in an entire year. And he beams at the pictures of my son dressed in an Einstein costume. He looks at me, and before he can say it, I preempt him. I know. I have no problems. Not believing in God doesn't mean you don't have gods. That's it for No Mercy, No Malice this week. Until next week, I'm Scott Galloway. I don't want to say it went well, but I'm feeling a little Oksana Bayil post, ice dance victory pose. We'll see you next week.